are you anticipating that the whole of Europe at some point this year will end up either being cut off or cutting itself off from Russian gas?
I don't really think that we should anticipate a full cutoff of Europe from Russian gas, although we advocate and others are advocating a full embargo on natural gas as well, but it would probably take some time. So it's more reasonable to expect such measures as some special duties on Russian gas or escrow accounts. There will be a lot of tensions around natural gas supplies, but I would not anticipate a full cutoff.
Well, and of course, Russia still is paying Ukraine to allow that gas supply to pass through your country into Europe. Is Ukraine willing to sacrifice that billions of dollars, potentially $1.5 billion that you get for gas transit?
Yes, if it can stop the war, because the damage that we have because of the war has already exceeded 300 billion euros. So it's 200 times more than we get for transit per year. So it cannot be compared. And I'm not even talking about human losses. So that's why if it can stop the war, definitely we would sacrifice these revenues. But we don't want to sacrifice these revenues if it won't change anything. If Europe continues to buy Russian gas, Russia just moves all the flows to other pipelines like Nord Stream 2, for example, that is ready to be operating, but it was stopped because of the sanctions. So that's not something that we would like to achieve with just unilateral interruption of gas transit.
So, sorry, just to be clear here, Yuri, are you saying that if Ukraine, if Kyiv decided to cut off gas transit, that Germany would have no choice but to open up Nord Stream 2?
No, I'm not saying it, but there is a risk like this. So there is a risk that Russia will move gas flows to Nord Stream 2, to Yamal Europe, to Turk streams. There are alternative pipelines that can easily replace all the flows that currently go through Ukraine. And then Russia can start bombing Ukrainian gas transmission infrastructure. It's not happening at the moment. They bomb our distribution infrastructure, but not the transit infrastructure. So there is also a military dimension that we should take into account.
Well, can you talk to us more about the military impact, how you have suffered from that?
Again, we have to be fair to say that Russians deliberately, they do not bomb the transit infrastructure because it helps them just to get more money from Europe. At the same time, they do bomb the distribution infrastructure just to put more pressure on the Ukrainian government to create some humanitarian crises or even a catastrophe in the towns that they besiege, like, for example, in Mariupol or other towns. So we understand that if there is no transit, then the risk of them bombing the transit infrastructure increases.
Okay. At the moment, there is some ambiguity. There's a lack of clarity about how Europe should be paying for its gas, whether or not it should be paying in euros and those euros get converted into rubles. What is your view on this? You clearly indicated throughout this interview already that paying for Russian gas is helping to prolong the war in Ukraine. What do you think Europe should do in terms of the rules here? How would you set the rules in terms of paying for Russian gas? What do you think they should look like?
At least Europe should stick to the contracts and do not allow Gazprom to avoid potential financial sanctions. And so this whole idea about rubles and this conversion is to be able to avoid potential financial sanctions that would limit financial flows to Putin's regime. Because probably you've heard about so-called escrow accounts idea or some price cap that would limit amount of money Putin can get to Russia from gas exports. So European companies can still pay for gas, but at least a part of this money will be frozen on accounts in Europe. So in order not to let it happen, Putin had this idea so that European off-takers of Russian gas, they instruct their banks to convert euros into rubles, and then it's very difficult to stop rubles from going into Russia. So European companies should not help Putin avoid potential sanctions. That's why they should not agree to convert their euros into rubles, as Gazprom insists. And they have all the contractual rights not to agree this blackmail from Gazprom and from Putin.
So what do you say to countries like Hungary that are doing exactly that?
I'm saying that they're helping violent Putin regime to continue this war. And it does not help Ukraine, it does not help Hungary, it doesn't help the world, because this war already brought so much damage that it should be stopped as soon as possible.
Finally, Yuriy, what is the situation like on the ground in Ukraine when it comes to the availability of energy? How do you feel about Ukrainian energy security for the country itself at this time?
As a national company, we're able, luckily, to provide security of supply. So we covered all the demands from our customers in Ukraine. We have enough gas in our storage. We have sizable local production that we continue to maintain despite the hostilities. We also are financially strong. So, for example, in March alone, we provided $1.3 billion as hidden subsidies to our customers. We decided not to increase prices. We're very flexible with payment terms, etc. So currently, again, we can sustain, but at the same time, because this war continues, we would need assistance from the international partners, because we're talking about some critical needs of Ukrainian people who are still in Ukraine. It's about 35 million people. They need heating, they need electricity, they need water, and it all depends on natural gas, and it all depends on us being able to satisfy these critical needs of Ukrainians.